Murdock is a changed man. He was reworked back in version 40, and I've been really kind of tweaking around with him, trying the different decks out, and just trying to get a good game on. Honestly, trying to not only do well myself, but still have some mistakes that I can show you guys that you can learn from. In this deck, we are trying to go with his kind of newfound purpose and see how we can best suit that case. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a hero decking guide. I am Sylphin. So we have my meta deck here for Murdock called Robo. Now, Murdock is a changed man, and what he is all about is about chasing down enemies, having a big local presence in chasing enemies down and taking them out, but also a global presence with his ultimate. So with that, we'll talk more about that later. So what I want to do is really kind of emphasize that with a lot of power. We'll talk about that later. The Warlord here, simply because this increases your DPS the most. You are ultimately a DPS role as the carry. Twin Blast kind of get away with something else. So the Warlord has been shown in the math. Go check out that video to increase the DPS the most. We got a cast token and a healer token for the early game if you need that healer token. Otherwise, just go straight into a Madstone gem. Once you have finished off that Madstone gem, then you go straight into the war. Now, I had to kind of do this deck funny. It is a bit odd. It is a, well, it's a 8-point ward. It is quite different. I just get the ward and don't upgrade it, and then I go back into a Madstone gem. After this point, you finish off with a Flashfire Piston because he does need that attack speed, as his basic attack's pretty darn slow. Now after that, you can get a blink shot here. There's two of them because if you burn one and you don't get a kill to reset the cooldown, you have another one for you to kind of reduce that cooldown just a bit. So if you have to burn one to get out of it, to get out of a sticky situation, you have another one there. Then you get your hemorrhage pretty much as soon as possible. After you finish these 5-point cards, you get this hemorrhage. What this does, gains 44 attack speed and 80 max movement speed, so you can gain, you can just hit your target faster, and you can chase them down even faster than Murdock already can do. So it's pretty crazy. The synergy there is really helps him do his thing. After the hemorrhage, we have the first of our crit cards, and it's this Spear of the Rift Runner with a whole bunch of power and 24% crit chance. That's enough crit chance for you to then go into your Blade of Agora for that crit bonus, and then you finish it off with this Spear of the Rift Hunter. Somewhere in there, you want to get this Whirling Wand and just get a Brutal Kinetic or that Kinetic, just because you're going to really be hitting really slowly. And it's just kind of, if you want to hit faster, you can choose to upgrade this Whirling Wand piecemeal. But finish off your crit, and then the Whirling Wand, and that is the deck. Final deck here is Blade of Agora, Hemorrhage, Whirling Wand, Spear of the Rift Runner, Spear of the Rift Hunter, and this Sage's Ward. Now, as a carry, we have to talk about his basic attack, because that's where all of his damage pretty much comes from. We have to talk about it. He hits like a truck. Every time he shoots his gun, it hits hard, but his scaling from power doesn't end up being all that much. So what that means is he's going to automatically get a little bit more value out of attack speed and crit than other carries. Now to add on top of that, he attacks very slowly to begin with and doesn't gain much attack speed per hero level. What this means in the math department is he likes attack speed. He really likes attack speed. What this also means, from the poor power scaling, although he hits hard, he still likes his crit. I mean, crit works fantastic on all of the carries because they just do lots of damage, period, and 2.5 times more damage is still a lot. He really likes attack speed, and he does like his crit. So just keep that in mind when you are building your own and when you are taking a look here at this deck. Now, in the early game, we start off with a Madstone gem. Just because we have a phase, he'll have a very nice time staying alive. Now, the very first ability that I get here depends, kind of depends on who you're coming up against. This thing now can get nice in my face with a nice dash in front of me into a burst, so I'm going to get my buckshot. Now, my buckshot does a very important thing. Now, what his buckshot does is it deals damage in front of you up to 1,000 unit range. Now, if an allied hero is within 700 units, that hero is pushed away 700 units. So if they're 600 units, then they're pushed to 700 units. If they're 100 units away from you, they're pushed to 700 units away. It's a great way to push an enemy back that's really getting on top of you, and a good burst damage as well. If you can get a heavy basic attack off, animation cancel the last half of your basic attack with your buckshot, followed up by another basic attack, oh boy, it hurts. It really hurts. So that first 3 things that you can get off on the enemy really hurts. So I like upgrading this quite a bit. It's a good source of damage, a good source of burst damage that works really well. Now, the second ability that I get here is my E ability, and that is called Shots Fired. Grants Murdock's next basic attack bonus range, so it goes farther than normal, and gets basic penetration every few seconds. Now, if you miss with this shot, the cooldown is consumed. So you can see here that the cooldown just came off, and boom. If I had missed that shot, it still would have gone on cooldown. So you have to kind of, you got to pay attention to kind of what that is. If you are trying to snipe somebody, you can definitely maybe take a peek down at your E, and you're just looking for that last shot as they're running away. You can kind of pay attention as to when you got to save it and stuff like that. So just be aware that that can come off cooldown, and you can use that appropriately. Now, the basic penetration is here at level 1, 15 all the way to 60 basic penetration that you get on that one shot. Well, that's pretty darn good. That means for one shot every 10 to 4 seconds, you're basically dealing true damage on everybody but tank. So you know that, ooh, if I can really land this, if really pay attention and land that shot, it's a good source of damage, followed up by buckshot into another basic, great burst damage. So pay attention to this ability. It is basically an ability. You have to pay attention to it and use it. Right now, I can easily step out of the basic tower range, or not even, and just hit this Feng Mao with that extended basic attack range. Use it. It's there for you to use, and just be a part of what Murdock does. Use it. It's highly underutilized. Now, the last ability that I choose to get is called Hot Pursuit. While the previous ability was a passive, it's a passive, but it still kind of affects your basic attack. This one is a pretty straight up passive. What happens is you gain additional movement speed when running at visible, critically wounded enemies within a certain range. So you gain 100 to 250 movement speed bonus on enemies that are critically wounded from 3,000 to 6,000 units away. So 3,000 units here at level 1 is pretty much the whole tower radius. 6,000 units, well, is twice that. It's a long ways away. Basically, at level 4, if you can see an enemy's health bar, you're pretty much, I think that's about the distance. That's about the distance of that 6,000 unit range, so you're pretty much guaranteed that movement speed bonus. I don't upgrade this too much. You still just, I end up finding that you can take enemies down anyways. There's enough crowd control and stuff like that, so I don't usually upgrade that, just because the buckshot is more important than your E, than your Q. So that is his upgrade priority for me. Buckshot, followed by Shots Fired, followed by Hot Pursuit. So here in the early game, you are just focused on basic attacks and last hitting minions. Last hit minions, that's all that you care about. Here we are on the Raptor side, so I kind of don't want to push the tower too much. We end up taking it down quite easily, but I usually want to freeze the lane so you can farm easily because you're really not going anywhere for a long time. Now, the Feng Mao here is freezing his lane, making it tough for me to farm. I rotate over to cover for the mid laner that went to the other lane, just trying to be a little bit helpful for my friendly team. You can see we went into another Madstone gem, and our ward didn't upgrade it yet. A little bit weird in this deck, but still very, very effective. That burst basic attack into your buckshot into your basic attack, really, really strong. So very strong here in this early game. Always wanting to get the gold buff that's sitting right here. Always getting that on the odd minute mark and just trying to get as much CP as possible. Now his ultimate is something that defines Murdock's role. Now it's called Long Arm of the Law. It's an unlimited range laser blast that can be shot through anything and ignores ability armor and deals damage. So it deals ability damage 180 to 300. Mana cost, really nothing to worry about. Power scaling at 0.75. Does do okay. And the cooldown's 90 to 70, so fairly quick. It's really quite a quick, ultimate. So here you can see, boom, I landed the last hit on that Revenant, making sure that I can kill him. You saw that Hot Pursuit kick in just a bit. He really wasn't going anywhere, as I'd definitely be able to finish him off. Now, this ultimate is something that defines Murdock. His local influence is very high. He hits like a truck, he has good burst, and he can follow, and he can chase you down if he gets you low. Basically, he's pretty much going to kill you if you're in an unfortunate circumstance. So, but he also has something else. He also has the capability of having his global influence. If your allies can get people low enough, you can finish them off. And this grants you CP, this grants obviously the assist for the rest of your team, and gains you map pressure, and just potentially a siege objective. It's a fantastic ultimate that helps the entire team and you. Now, because you are very strong in the early game, or sorry, in your local, in kind of like your local area, and in the global area, you're kind of like a Revenant in that you are a snowball hero. If you're always securing last hits and kills in your local area, and you're securing the last hits and those kills in the global scene, you're basically one gigantic pressure on the map that that can have potential to snowball. That is what Murdock is about. He falls off in the late game. He's not as strong as the hyper carries like Yin, Serath, Sparrow, and Grim. He's not those. His scaling isn't that great. He doesn't get much attack speed per hero level. He falls off in the late game. He's kind of like a little bit of a Revenant that is meant to snowball a bit and just hit really hard. Now, at this point, we have our Hemorrhage and a Madstone gem. I let this Serath get the last hit. I do it a few times here. There's a few times when I'm like, we're going to make this kill. I'm going to let her. She's a hyper carry. She actually needs that CP a little bit more. I let her get the Raptors that we just got a few minutes before this. Just keep that in mind when you're playing with two carries as to who can really use that CP a little bit more. Now, the Hemorrhage is fantastic. Like we said a little bit earlier, you can use this as your attack speed. You're like, hey, for a little bit of time, I have this attack speed to do some great DPS. Use this maybe at the latter half of an engagement, maybe not at the beginning, just because obviously you want to secure kills and kind of do that. That's kind of what Murdock's role is. So if you can save that perhaps to the latter half, maybe that's more appropriate. With that said, if you use that at the beginning, really output that DPS, then you can just rely on your Hot Pursuit passive to kind of just give you that movement speed anyways. Yeah, you won't have that attack speed, but hopefully you don't need it. Now, I'm showing you quite a bit of me in lane and split pushing and defending lanes because Murdock, again, has a global presence. If you are playing with a Murdock, know that. come to maybe rely, or at least get, you know, get aware that you have a Murdock that can finish kills. If you can't, at least he can, and then that actually helps him. He can farm in lane, he can split push, he can defend lanes really well, and still be a part somewhat of little skirmishes and team fights. Murdock is much more of a MOBA-esque carry in that he has a global presence and he has a great local presence as well. So if you can kind of feed off of those two things, you can have multiple areas of influence in your team strategy than otherwise. Now, this certainly isn't the most highly skilled duel ever because we both miss a ton. This Revenant comes in, I'm like, uh-oh. He is meant to do this. I tried to dodge his Obliterate. It somehow still worked when I was behind him. But I finished him off with a buckshot. And my Hemorrhage, I used it there a little late, admittedly. Because I probably could have used that a little bit earlier. But the Decker, fantastic long-range stun there. Always turn around and try to see the projectile coming, and then you can dodge it. Turn around, face it, so that you can use it to get away. So there you go. I win with the Revenant. Nice dodging, both of us dodging each other. Probably should have used that Hemorrhage a little bit earlier. So here's me relying on my phase. I'm just kind of being a little too aggressive. And I get focused down. Murdock, no escape. We had the Blink Charm, the Blink Shot, but I didn't even have it on because I was relying on my phase. The phase was doing really well, and unfortunately get taken down. That is quite unfortunate, but again, you are Murdock. You have no escape. You really do. You'll have a small pushback, but other than that, you got nothing. You can see here that we've transitioned into our crit. We have 24% with power. Power is much better than crit on the way, and then once you get there, then you can transition into that crit very nicely. We can see I have our Blade of Agora, getting rid of those Madstone gems, and then you can see I'm actually upgrading. I did what I suggested earlier, get that Whirling Wand with the Brutal Kinetic, just so you have some sustained attack speed, and then start getting all of that crit here in the Spear of the Rift Hunter. That makes this transition as smooth and as effective as possible, and trying to always stay on the highest power curve at all times. Now I can finally show you a snipe, but I miss. You really need to get used to his... You really have to get used to his Long Armor of the Law. If you have a mouse that can instantaneously reduce the sensitivity of it, like I have a little button that I just press and then it becomes very sensitive. That really helps, but otherwise, you just gotta get used to it. It takes practice, it takes leading them. Be patient, be very patient, and try to really understand where they're trying to go and get a good read of the situation before. Don't kind of just click, right? Take your time, be patient with it. That really seems to work the best. You can see at this point, we're getting kind of caught out here a little bit, and unfortunately, that is due to the phase and the Serath here. Kind of splitting up, and I'm not playing safe enough. So we have Orb Prime, and we've reached kind of the peak of kind of our power point here. We have all of our crit to extract as much value out of this Blade of Agora as possible. We're going into our Whirling Wand because he does need that attack speed. Even though we have that Hemorrhage, we still really need it. For all the time that it's down, it can work really well. I choose to put it on here just so I can really make sure to finish off that Decker as he's going away. And again, I'm not patient enough, and I don't wait for that Fang Mao. It's okay. The Serath can take the kills. Again, she's a hyper carry. I'm fine with that. As you can see, 2, 3, and 5. That's okay. We did much more than just kills on Murdock on this game. We did much more pushing, defending, and being kind of a MOBA hero. And that's something that is really starting to kind of come to fruition with different heroes in Paragon now, and different cards, etc. etc. So we can take a look at the final cards here that we didn't finish in this game. So at this point, you would have just finished off your hemorrhage with some lifesteal. This lifesteal here, definitely get as soon as you've gotten the Blade of Agora and maybe a couple of these crit upgrades. Really, you can get it at that point, or even before. It's definitely not as effective without that crit bonus, but you definitely save it for at least after the crit bonus. Then you go into this just Whirling Wand, Major Cast, and a Kinetic, and then the Sage's Ward here. This power here you could maybe save for last, just because that Kinetic. Yeah, you have Hemorrhage, but for all the other times that that it's not on, it's really nice to hit faster, because he does hit like a truck. So there you guys go. Let me know what you think of this deck. What do you guys think of Murdock? How has he been since he's been changed? Please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share it with the community, guys, and of course subscribe. If you guys like this content, found it useful, please subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. Till next time, like always, stay optimistic and positive.